Lisa thought she had hit the jackpot when she found the duplex on Oak Street. After months of apartment hunting in her tight budget, this place seemed too good to be true. The rent was reasonable, the neighborhood looked quiet, and best of all, it had a small home office where she could run her online tutoring business. The duplex was one of those old buildings split right down the middle, 2 front doors, 2 separate living spaces. But they shared some of the basic stuff like plumbing and electrical systems. Lisa didn't mind sharing utilities if it meant lower rent. She was just happy to finally have her own place after living with 3 roommates for 2 years. On moving day, Lisa was struggling to carry her heavy desk up the front steps when her neighbor appeared. The woman looked to be in her 50s with perfectly styled gray hair and clothes that screamed, "I shop at expensive stores." She introduced herself as Mrs. Patterson and immediately offered to help. "Oh, honey, let me give you a hand with that," Mrs. Patterson said with a bright smile. "Welcome to the neighborhood. I've been living here for 8 years and I just love having good neighbors." Mrs. Patterson seemed like a dream neighbor. She helped Lisa carry boxes, gave her a rundown of the local grocery stores, and even brought over a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies that evening. She explained that she was retired from working at the local bank and spent most of her time gardening and volunteering at the community center. "If you ever need anything, just knock," Mrs. Patterson said as she handed over the cookies. "We neighbors need to look out for each other." Lisa felt so lucky. Moving to a new place was always scary, but having a friendly neighbor made everything feel more welcoming. Mrs. Patterson seemed like the type of person who would water your plants when you went out of town and keep an eye on your mail. For the first few weeks, everything was perfect. Mrs. Patterson would wave from her garden every morning when Lisa took her coffee outside. They'd chat over the fence about the weather and local happenings. Mrs. Patterson even recommended Lisa's tutoring services to some families in the neighborhood, which brought in extra income right when Lisa needed it most. The duplex itself was working out great too. Lisa had set up her home office in the spare bedroom and was building up her client base teaching kids math and science online. The shared utilities meant lower bills, and everything seemed to be running smoothly. The only weird thing was that sometimes she could hear water running in the walls, but she figured that was normal for an older building. Then came the morning that changed everything. Lisa woke up around 7 to get ready for her first tutoring session of the day. She stumbled into the bathroom, still half asleep, and turned on the sink faucet to brush her teeth. Instead of clear water, what came out was a disgusting brownish liquid that smelled like a flower shop mixed with a swamp. At first, Lisa thought maybe there was some city maintenance going on. These things happened sometimes in older neighborhoods. But as she looked closer, she could see chunks of something floating in the water. And that smell, it was definitely some kind of fancy soap or bath product, but mixed with other gross stuff she didn't want to think about. She tried the shower next. Same thing. Murky, smelly water that was clearly not coming from the city water supply. This was coming from somewhere else, and given that she shared plumbing with Mrs. Patterson, there was really only one explanation. Lisa didn't want to jump to conclusions, though. Maybe Mrs. Patterson didn't realize there was a problem. Maybe something had gotten into the shared pipes by accident. She decided to wait a few hours to see if the water cleared up on its own. By lunchtime, the water was still gross. Lisa couldn't shower, couldn't brush her teeth properly, and definitely couldn't use her kitchen sink. She had to cancel 2 tutoring sessions because she felt too gross to be on video calls with her students. Finally, she decided to talk to Mrs. Patterson about it. She walked over and knocked on her neighbor's door, still hoping this was all just a misunderstanding. The woman who answered the door was not the same friendly person who had welcomed Lisa to the neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson's face was cold, and she didn't even fully open the door. "What do you want?" Mrs. Patterson asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Lisa was taken aback by the sudden attitude change, but she pressed on. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think there might be a problem with our shared plumbing. My water is coming out, really discolored and smelly, and I was wondering if you've noticed anything similar." Mrs. Patterson's eyes narrowed. "My water is fine. Maybe you should learn how to use your drains properly instead of bothering your neighbors." The response was so unexpected and harsh that Lisa just stood there for a moment, not sure what to say. I'm not sure what you mean. I haven't done anything different with my drains. I was just hoping we could figure out what's causing the problem together. The problem is that some people don't know how to maintain their plumbing, Mrs. Patterson snapped. Maybe if you weren't running your little business from home and using so much water, we wouldn't have these issues. With that, Mrs. Patterson slammed the door in Lisa's face. Lisa walked back to her side of the duplex feeling confused and hurt. What had just happened? Yesterday, Mrs. Patterson was bringing her cookies, and now she was acting like Lisa had personally offended her entire family tree. That evening, Lisa decided to investigate the plumbing situation herself. She went outside to where the building's main drain access was located. It wasn't hard to find. There was a small metal cover near the foundation that both units connected to. When she lifted the cover and shined her phone's flashlight down into the drain, she couldn't believe what she saw. The pipe was completely clogged with what looked like clumps of gray hair, coffee grounds, and other debris that definitely hadn't come from her side of the building. Among the mess, she could clearly see strands of Mrs. Patterson's distinctive silver hair. The same hair she'd complimented just weeks ago was now clogging up their shared drainage system and backing up into Lisa's apartment. As Lisa stared down at the clogged drain, a horrible realization started to creep in. This wasn't an accident. The timing, Mrs. Patterson's sudden attitude change, the specific types of debris in the drain, it all pointed to something much more sinister than a simple plumbing mishap. Mrs. Patterson, the sweet neighbor who had welcomed her with cookies and helpful advice, was deliberately sabotaging their shared plumbing system. But why? What had Lisa done wrong? She'd been nothing but polite and friendly. She kept her music low, didn't have loud parties, and barely made any noise during her tutoring sessions. Standing there in the growing darkness, looking down at the evidence of her neighbor's betrayal, Lisa felt her stomach drop. She was starting to realize that her perfect new home might be turning into a nightmare, and the sweet old lady next door might not be who she pretended to be. This was just the beginning, though Lisa didn't know it yet. Mrs. Patterson's campaign of harassment was about to get much, much worse. Lisa woke up the next morning hoping that maybe she'd just had a really weird dream. But when she turned on her bathroom faucet, the same disgusting brown water came pouring out. The smell was even worse now, like someone had mixed expensive perfume with garbage water. She had 3 tutoring sessions scheduled that day, and she couldn't exactly show up on video looking like she hadn't showered in a week. Lisa ended up driving to the local gym and paying for a day pass just so she could use their shower facilities. $25 just to get clean for work. Money she really couldn't afford to waste. When she got back home, she found a note taped to her front door. It was written in Mrs. Patterson's neat handwriting. Some people need to learn proper drain maintenance. Excessive hair washing and food waste disposal is affecting the entire building's plumbing system. Lisa read the note 3 times, getting angrier each time. Hair washing, food waste disposal. She barely cooked at home and washed her hair every other day like a normal person. Meanwhile, Mrs. Patterson's silver hair was literally clogging their shared drain. That afternoon, Lisa decided to be the bigger person and try talking to Mrs. Patterson again. Maybe if she approached it differently, they could work this out like adults. She knocked on her neighbor's door with a friendly smile, determined to keep things civil. Mrs. Patterson opened the door wearing rubber gloves and holding a bottle of drain cleaner. "What now?" she said, not even trying to hide her irritation. "I was hoping we could talk about the plumbing situation," Lisa said carefully. "I checked the shared drain yesterday, and it looks like there's a pretty serious blockage. Maybe we could split the cost of getting a plumber out here." Mrs. Patterson's face turned red. "I've lived here for 8 years without any problems. Ever since you moved in, it's been nothing but issues. Maybe you should consider finding somewhere else to live if you can't handle basic apartment living." The suggestion hit Lisa like a slap. She'd done nothing wrong, and now this woman was basically telling her to move out of her own home. "I'm not going anywhere," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I pay rent here just like you do. We need to fix this plumbing problem together." Mrs. Patterson stepped closer, and Lisa could smell the chemical scent of drain cleaner on her gloves. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, little girl. I know everyone in this neighborhood, and I know how to make life very difficult for problem tenants." With that threat hanging in the air, Mrs. Patterson slammed the door again. Lisa stood there for a moment, her heart pounding. This was escalating way beyond a simple neighbor dispute. Mrs. Patterson was actively threatening her now. Over the next few days, the plumbing problems got worse. Every morning, Lisa would wake up to find new disgusting surprises in her drains. Coffee grounds would be floating in her bathroom sink. Her kitchen drain would be clogged with what looked like vegetable peels and eggshells. Once, she even found a small earring stuck in her shower drain. Definitely not hers. The worst part was that it was affecting her work. Lisa had to cancel sessions when she couldn't get clean water to wash her face before video calls. She was losing money every day, and her regular students were starting to ask if everything was okay. One morning, Lisa caught Mrs. Patterson in the act. She was looking out her window during a break between tutoring sessions when she saw her neighbor walking around to the back of the building. Lisa quietly opened her back door and watched as Mrs. Patterson lifted the cover to the shared drain access and dumped something down into it. Lisa grabbed her phone and started recording, but Mrs. Patterson was too far away to see clearly what she was dumping. Still, the fact that she was doing it at all was proof that this wasn't accidental. When Mrs. Patterson finished and walked back to her side of the building, Lisa went to check the drain. Fresh coffee grounds were scattered around the opening, and she could see new debris floating in the water below. That afternoon, Lisa called their landlord, Mr. Rodriguez. He was a nice enough guy who owned several rental properties in the area, but he clearly didn't like getting involved in tenant disputes. "Look, Lisa," he said over the phone. "I've known Mrs. Patterson for years. She's never been a problem tenant. Are you sure this isn't just normal wear and tear on an older plumbing system?" Lisa explained about the video she'd taken and all the evidence she'd found in the drain, but Mr. Rodriguez just sighed. "Can't you two just work this out between yourselves? I really don't want to get in the middle of a neighbor feud." "This isn't a feud," Lisa said, frustration creeping into her voice. "She's deliberately sabotaging our shared plumbing, and it's affecting my ability to live in my apartment." "I'll talk to her," Mr. Rodriguez said, though he didn't sound enthusiastic about it. "But honestly, if you can't get along with your neighbor, maybe this isn't the right place for you." Lisa hung up feeling more frustrated than ever. Everyone seemed to think this was just a personality clash, but Mrs. Patterson was actively trying to force her out of her home. That evening, things got even worse. Lisa was in the middle of teaching a high school student calculus when she heard a strange gurgling sound coming from her bathroom. She excused herself from the video call and went to investigate. Her bathroom floor was covered in water, not clean water, the same gross, smelly water that had been coming out of her faucets, but now it was everywhere. The toilet was overflowing. The shower drain was backing up and water was seeping under the bathroom door into her hallway. Lisa grabbed every towel she owned and started trying to contain the flood. Her laptop bag was sitting on the floor near the bathroom door, and she could see water creeping toward it. She snatched it up just in time, but her heart was racing as she realized how close she'd come to losing her main work computer. While she was dealing with the flood, her student was still waiting on the video call. Lisa had to quickly explain that there was a plumbing emergency and reschedule the session. Another lost income, another disappointed student. It took her 2 hours to clean up all the water and disinfect everything. By the time she was done, she was exhausted, and her bathroom still smelled terrible. She'd had to throw away several towels that were too gross to save. The next morning, Lisa found another note on her door. Proper drain maintenance would prevent these unfortunate incidents. Some people clearly need to learn how to live in shared housing. That was the final straw. Mrs. Patterson wasn't just being petty anymore. She was actively destroying Lisa's property and threatening her livelihood. The flooding could have ruined her computer, which would have put her out of business entirely. Lisa decided it was time to start documenting everything. She bought a small security camera and set it up, pointing toward the shared drain access. If Mrs. Patterson wanted to play games, Lisa was going to make sure she had evidence of every single thing her neighbor did. She also started keeping a journal of every incident. What time it happened, what damage was done, how much money it cost her. She took photos of every clogged drain, every piece of debris, every nasty note Mrs. Patterson left. If Mr. Rodriguez and Mrs. Patterson thought they could bully her into moving out, they were about to learn that Lisa wasn't going down without a fight. She'd worked too hard to build her tutoring business and find a place she could afford. She wasn't about to let some vindictive neighbor destroy everything she'd worked for. But as Lisa was about to discover, Mrs. Patterson was just getting started with her campaign of harassment. The worst was yet to come. Lisa's security camera turned out to be the best money she'd ever spent. Within just 3 days of setting it up, she caught Mrs. Patterson red-handed. The footage was crystal clear. Her neighbor sneaking around the back of the building at 6 in the morning, dumping what looked like a whole bag of something down the shared drain. Lisa watched the video over and over again, her anger growing each time. There was Mrs. Patterson, the same woman who'd welcomed her with cookies, deliberately sabotaging their plumbing system. She was wearing a bathrobe and slippers, like she'd just rolled out of bed specifically to cause problems. But Lisa knew that one video wouldn't be enough. She needed to build a case that nobody could ignore. So she kept the camera running 24 hours a day, and Mrs. Patterson kept giving her more evidence. Over the next 2 weeks, Lisa caught her neighbor on camera at least 8 different times. Sometimes Mrs. Patterson would dump coffee grounds down the drain. Other times it looked like food waste or even chunks of something that might have been soap. Once Lisa watched in disbelief as Mrs. Patterson poured what appeared to be cat litter down the drain, even though Lisa had never seen any cats around the building. The damage to Lisa's apartment was getting worse too. Every few days brought a new plumbing disaster. Her kitchen sink would back up with gross water that smelled like Mrs. Patterson's expensive perfume, mixed with rotting food. Her shower would suddenly start draining slowly, leaving her standing in inches of murky water every morning. The worst incident happened on a Thursday morning when Lisa had back-to-back tutoring sessions scheduled. She woke up to find her entire bathroom flooded again, but this time it was much worse than before. The water was black and smelled so bad that Lisa had to open all her windows just to breathe. Her laptop case had been sitting on the bedroom floor near the bathroom door, and this time she wasn't quick enough to save it. When she opened it up, she found that water had seeped through the zipper and completely destroyed her computer. The screen was dead, the keyboard was soaked, and when she tried to turn it on, nothing happened. Lisa just sat there on her bed, holding her dead laptop, and trying not to cry. That computer had everything on it. Her student files, her lesson plans, her tax documents, even family photos that she'd never backed up anywhere else. And now it was all gone because of one bitter woman's vendetta against her. She had to call 6 different students that day to cancel their sessions. Each conversation was embarrassing and frustrating. How do you explain to a parent that their kid's math tutor can't teach today because her crazy neighbor flooded her apartment? Some of the parents were understanding, but others started asking if maybe they should find a more reliable tutor. Lisa couldn't afford to replace her laptop right away, so she had to borrow money from her sister just to buy a cheap used one that would let her keep working. The whole situation was costing her hundreds of dollars and putting her business at risk. But every time something bad happened, Lisa made sure to document it. She took photos of every flood, saved samples of the debris that came up through her drains, and kept detailed notes about dates and times. She was building a file that would prove beyond any doubt what Mrs. Patterson was doing. The breakthrough came when Lisa decided to check what Mrs. Patterson was actually dumping down the drain. After watching her neighbor pour something down, there early one morning, Lisa waited until Mrs. Patterson went back inside, then went to investigate. She put on rubber gloves and used a small net to fish some of the debris out of the drain. What she found made her stomach turn. There were coffee grounds, sure, but also chunks of hardened soap, small pieces of jewelry, food scraps, and even what looked like pieces of sponge that had been cut up into small bits. But the most damning evidence was a small plastic container that had gotten caught in the drain cover. It was one of those travel-sized shampoo bottles, and it still had Mrs. Patterson's name on a pharmacy label stuck to the side. She'd apparently been cutting up empty containers and dumping the pieces down the drain just to cause more blockages. Lisa carefully bagged everything as evidence. She was starting to feel like a detective, but she knew she needed to be thorough if she wanted anyone to take her seriously. The next step was trying to get help from official sources. Lisa started with the local housing authority. figuring they might have some power to intervene in disputes between tenants. She spent an entire morning on the phone, getting transferred from department to department, explaining her situation over and over again. Finally, she reached someone who seemed willing to listen. The housing inspector, a tired-sounding man named Dave, agreed to come out and take a look at the situation. Lisa was hopeful that finally, someone in authority would see what was happening and do something about it. Dave showed up the next Tuesday, and Lisa walked him through everything. She showed him the video evidence on her phone, the physical debris she'd collected, and the damage to her apartment. He took notes and seemed interested, but his conclusion was disappointing. "Look, this is definitely a problem," Dave said, "but it's really a civil matter between you and your neighbor. The housing authority can't force her to stop unless there's a health hazard that affects the whole building." Lisa felt her heart sink. "But she's deliberately destroying property and harassing me. Isn't that illegal?" "It might be," Dave said, "but you'd need to take that up with the police. I can document what I've seen here, but I can't force anyone to change their behavior." So Lisa's next stop was the local police station. She gathered up all her evidence, the videos, the photos, the samples of debris, her journal of incidents, and marched down to file a complaint. The officer at the front desk looked skeptical before Lisa even started talking. When she explained that she wanted to file a complaint about her neighbor clogging their shared drain, he actually rolled his eyes. "Ma'am, this sounds like a civil dispute," he said. "We don't really get involved in neighbor arguments about plumbing." Lisa pulled out her phone and showed him the video of Mrs. Patterson dumping debris down the drain. "But this is vandalism, right? She's deliberately damaging shared property." The officer watched the video, and his expression got a little more serious. "I can take a report," he said, "but honestly, the prosecutor probably won't do anything with this unless there's major property damage involved." Lisa wanted to scream. Her laptop was destroyed, her apartment was constantly flooded, and her business was suffering, but apparently that wasn't major enough for anyone to care. The final straw came when Lisa decided to confront Mrs. Patterson directly with the video evidence. She'd been avoiding another face-to-face conversation, but she thought maybe if she showed Mrs. Patterson the footage, it might shock her into stopping. Lisa knocked on Mrs. Patterson's door one evening, holding her phone with the clearest video, queued up and ready to play. When Mrs. Patterson answered, Lisa didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I have video of you dumping things down our shared drain," Lisa said, holding up her phone. "I know what you've been doing, and I have proof." Instead of looking embarrassed or apologetic, Mrs. Patterson's face twisted into an expression of pure rage. "How dare you spy on me?" she screamed, loud enough that Lisa was sure the whole neighborhood could hear. "You have no right to record me on my own property." "The drain access isn't on your property," Lisa said, trying to stay calm. "It's shared space and you're using it to damage my apartment." Mrs. Patterson stepped closer and Lisa could see that her hands were shaking with anger. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "I've lived in this neighborhood for years, and I won't have some little nobody ruining it for everyone else. You think you're so smart with your little videos and your complaints, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." The threat was clear, and it sent a chill down Lisa's spine. This wasn't just about plumbing anymore. Mrs. Patterson was making it personal. As Lisa walked back to her side of the duplex, she realized that all her evidence and documentation might not be enough to stop Mrs. Patterson through official channels. The police weren't interested, the housing authority couldn't help, and the landlord was clearly on Mrs. Patterson's side. But Mrs. Patterson had just made a big mistake. She'd escalated from passive-aggressive harassment to direct threats, and she'd shown Lisa exactly how far she was willing to go to make her life miserable. Lisa was done playing defense. If nobody else was going to stop Mrs. Patterson, maybe it was time to take matters into her own hands. Lisa spent the next 3 days feeling completely defeated. She'd tried everything the right way, documenting evidence, calling authorities, following proper procedures, and nobody cared. Meanwhile, Mrs. Patterson was getting bolder with her, sabotage, like she knew she was untouchable. The breaking point came on a Friday morning when Lisa woke up to discover that Mrs. Patterson had outdone herself. The bathroom wasn't just flooded this time. There was actual sewage backing up through the drains. The smell was so bad that Lisa had to run outside just to breathe fresh air. When she came back in wearing a face mask, she found that the disgusting water had reached her bedroom. Her new laptop bag was soaked, along with several client folders she'd printed out for weekend prep work. Months of lesson plans were ruined, and she had to cancel her entire Friday schedule because her apartment was basically uninhabitable. Lisa sat on her front steps trying not to cry when her phone rang. It was her biggest client, a family whose teenage daughter she'd been tutoring in advanced chemistry for months. They were calling to let her know they wouldn't be needing her services anymore. "We've found someone more reliable," the mom said, not unkindly but firmly. "Katie really likes you, but these constant cancellations are affecting her preparation for the SATs. We need consistency." After hanging up, Lisa calculated how much money she'd lost just from that one client. Over $800 a month. Gone, just like that. Mrs. Patterson wasn't just making her life miserable anymore. She was systematically destroying Lisa's ability to make a living. That's when Lisa remembered something her college roommate used to talk about. Back in school, her roommate had dated a guy who worked for a plumbing company during summers. He used to tell stories about jobs he'd been called to, including some pretty creative solutions for dealing with stubborn blockages and water pressure problems. Lisa found herself thinking about those conversations more and more. Her roommate's boyfriend had mentioned something about how water always takes the path of least resistance, and how if you understand a building's plumbing system well enough, you can sometimes redirect problems back to their source. She'd never paid much attention to those stories at the time, but now they seemed incredibly relevant. Lisa started researching everything she could find about plumbing systems online. She watched YouTube videos about drainage, water pressure, and pipe layouts. She even found some tutorials about using basic equipment to test and manipulate water flow. The more she learned, the more she realized that Mrs. Patterson might have accidentally given her the perfect solution. All those months of sabotage had taught Lisa exactly how their shared plumbing system worked. She knew which drains connected where, how long it took for problems to show up, and most importantly, she knew that everything Mrs. Patterson was dumping down the drain had to go somewhere. Lisa's plan started forming slowly. It wasn't about revenge exactly. It was about justice. Mrs. Patterson had spent months making Lisa's life miserable, costing her thousands of dollars and nearly destroying her business. The authorities wouldn't help, the landlord didn't care, and Mrs. Patterson clearly thought she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. But what if the consequences came from the same source as the problem? What if all that sabotage could be redirected back where it belonged? Lisa spent the weekend researching her idea more thoroughly. She visited hardware stores, asking innocent questions about water pumps and pressure systems. She looked up the building's original plumbing schematics at the city planning office, claiming she was thinking about doing some renovations and wanted to understand the layout. The more she learned, the more feasible her plan seemed. The duplex's plumbing system was actually pretty simple. Everything from both units eventually connected to the same main line. Mrs. Patterson had been using that connection to send her problems to Lisa's side, but theoretically, it could work. The other way, too. Lisa also started paying closer attention to Mrs. Patterson's schedule. Her neighbor was surprisingly predictable. She left for grocery shopping every Tuesday morning, went to some kind of club meeting every Thursday afternoon, and visited someone, probably family, every Sunday after church. These regular absences would give Lisa the time she needed to work without being interrupted. The hardest part was getting the right equipment without arousing suspicion. Lisa couldn't just walk into a hardware store and ask for everything she needed all at once. Instead, she spread her purchases across multiple stores over several days. A water pump from one place, some specialized fittings from another, additional supplies from a third store. She told each clerk a different story about what she was working on. At one store, she was helping a friend with a fountain project. At another, she was dealing with a stubborn garden drainage issue. Nobody questioned her purchases because she bought items that could legitimately be used for innocent purposes. Lisa also had to time everything perfectly. Mrs. Patterson's biggest club meeting was coming up the following Thursday. Some kind of volunteer organization that met for several hours every week. Lisa had overheard her neighbor talking on the phone about it. mentioning that they usually went out for lunch afterward, which would give Lisa at least 4 hours to work undisturbed. The night before her plan, Lisa barely slept. Part of her couldn't believe she was actually going to go through with this. She'd never done anything remotely like this before. She was the type of person who returned extra change at the grocery store and felt guilty for days if she accidentally took someone else's parking spot. But Mrs. Patterson had pushed her past the point of turning the other cheek. Lisa had tried to be reasonable, tried to work things out peacefully, tried to get help through proper channels. None of it had worked, and Mrs. Patterson was only getting worse. The final motivation came Thursday morning when Lisa woke up to find another nasty note taped to her door. This one was different from the others, more personal and cruel. "Some people just don't belong in decent neighborhoods," it read. "Maybe it's time to find somewhere more suitable for your lifestyle and business practices. Continued problems with basic apartment living might require more serious interventions." The threat was barely veiled. Mrs. Patterson was essentially telling Lisa to move out or face even worse harassment. She was also attacking Lisa's business directly, which felt like a step too far. Lisa crumpled up the note and threw it in the trash. Then she pulled it back out and added it to her evidence file. She might need it later to prove that Mrs. Patterson had been threatening her. Around 10 that morning, Lisa watched from her window as Mrs. Patterson left for her club meeting, dressed in her usual fancy outfit and carrying a purse that probably cost more than Lisa's monthly rent. As soon as her neighbor's car disappeared around the corner, Lisa sprang into action. She gathered all the equipment she'd been collecting and went around to the back of the building where the shared drain access was located. Her heart was pounding as she knelt down next to the metal cover, but her hands were steady as she began setting up her equipment. Everything Lisa had learned over the past few weeks was about to be put to the test. Mrs. Patterson thought she was so clever, using their shared plumbing system to make Lisa's life miserable while keeping her own apartment pristine and problem-free. But Mrs. Patterson was about to learn that Lisa had been paying very close attention to how their plumbing system worked. And unlike her neighbor, Lisa actually understood the consequences of what she was about to do. As Lisa made the final connections on her equipment, she felt a strange sense of calm settling over her. For months, she'd been the victim in this situation, constantly reacting to Mrs. Patterson's attacks and trying to defend herself through official channels that didn't care. But now, for the first time since this whole nightmare started, Lisa was the one in control. Mrs. Patterson had taught her exactly how to manipulate their shared plumbing system, and now that knowledge was about to come back to haunt her in ways she never could have imagined.